All right. We get to begin. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Tov. I hope everything is going well. And if I'm not mistaken, we get to more or less dive right in. Anything else I need to cover along the way? Yes, no?
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Anybody have an anniversary today?
It is my wedding anniversary today.
Oh, congratulations.
Happy
Happy to
anniversary.
spend it with you.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Elaine had one, 2 days ago?
No, mine's next week. Yours
Well-
is yesterday, wasn't
That
it?
was yesterday.
Yeah, yours was
Mazel
yesterday.
tov. Mazel tov.
Mine's next
40
Thursday.
48 years.
Yep.
Congratulations, everybody.
There you are. I'm on 20. We made a point of getting married in the year 2000, so it'd be easy. So I wouldn't be one of those stereotypical husbands that wouldn't be able to count how many years.
But it's still, the key part is not the
Easy
year,
count.
it's the day.
Yeah. Right. It's the day after Veterans Day. That one I got. The you need something to anchor these things
Well,
to.
what is 20 years? What do you got to get it for 20 years?
Anything she wants, Norman.
That's like setting it up on a tee for this crowd. That's
You
like
know,
setting it up there. Somebody's going to take a swing at it.
I do my Eartha Kitt imitation of Santa Baby, but it's not.
No, please don't.
Right. Rabbi, but I'm afraid my 50th is next March. I'm afraid I'm going to be stuck at home. We're going to still be home.
Oh,
First of all, B'shat tova, Mazel tov, and second of all, we'll see. That just we'll see what the future holds. Just we'll take care until then. With that, I want to dive into to the text. The bracha for Torah study is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
And mute everybody if you have a question or a comment or anything like that. Please feel free to unmute yourself. So just to briefly review, like last time we went through Naomi and her daughters-in-law, Naomi's desire to separate because she can't do anything more for them, and we went over the laws of love, right, and marriage, which are important to understand Naomi's words in terms of when she says, do I have any more sons or any more sons in my womb that I could even give to you? Because again, by the law of the Torah, a childless, when a marriage ends because the husband died before any children were born of that marriage, the wife is automatically, as it were, engaged to the brother, and the first children are accounted to the dead brother, which is significant in terms of inheritance law, as we went over, and in terms of maintaining the name among the people, and is reflected one in the importance of who's engaged to whom, because under biblical law and then later in halacha, as soon as you're engaged, any outside sexual activity is adultery, right? There's no like black letter law prohibition on non-marital sex, but adultery, of course, is punishable by death. It's in the Ten Commandments. And adultery is in the Ten Commandments, and also in the Torah, it's punishable by death for both parties. And that begins as soon as you're engaged. So the fact that so when the husband dies childless, the wife is essentially automatically engaged to the brother. And Naomi says, "I don't have any more sons for you to be engaged to, so you should move along." that also then becomes significant in the story of Judah and Tamar, which plays on a version of that scenario in the book of Genesis, and that story ends with the birth of twins, including Peretz, who will be the ancestor of Boaz, who will, eventually be Ruth's.
Rabbi, can I interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
Phyllis Cass is trying to get on via an iPhone, and she can't get a password. She tried Torah, it didn't work. Can you text her, respond to her text with a password?
Sure.
She called me because she didn't know what to do. Her husband is using the computer, and she has to do that. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt everybody.
Oh, here we are. No password help. Okay, there we are.
I thought it was Torah.
That's it. Let's look.
I'm sorry, everybody.
No worries. Let me see what I can pull up for a second here. Yeah. So any questions, by the way, before we go on that stuff, on the levirate marriage, meaning the laws of marriage with a childless widow, and things like that. We got all of that. All right.
Rabbi, does the wife have a right of refusal?
She does not necessarily seem to, meaning that he seems to, but I don't know if this is the passcode or not. Let's see. Yeah.
Nancy Gorell must be happy about women's rights at this particular period of time. I'm just watching it.
I mean, all of us. It's not. I mean, we should all. I mean, look.
Thanks, Norm.
It's a. I mean, on some level, it's true. That's not unique to anyone. Like, it's sort of like the like. Societies are what they are. There'll be a point in time when people look at us and are amazed at how barbaric we are, right? Like that. That's just the way. Culture and history works. Here again, from our angle, she doesn't seem to have this right, so it seems like it's a negative thing. It's not entirely clear to me that in its context that this is disadvantageous for the woman. As we'll see in a moment, vis-a-vis Ruth, because of course the reason Naomi is broken up and sending her family away is and sending her daughters-in-law away is that she has no means of support, right? Like the primary means of support is a husband. After that, it's your sons, and after that, it's your grandsons. So she, like, all of the safety nets have been pulled out from under her. So like having the system where there would be like an extra one isn't the worst thing in the world in a society where women don't have standing. So like, it's easy to critique from a feminist perspective, though. Also, in a society where women don't have full standing, it provides a safety net, which isn't a bad thing.
What happens if the brother doesn't want her and the next brother or whatever doesn't want her, and what happens to her after that? Is she just thrown out, so to speak?
Then essentially she ends up in the setting of that essentially that Naomi is in now, or that her daughters-in-law are in now, right? Like that's
okay.
Like the if you remember looking at the piece from last week in the black letter law in Deuteronomy, it seems to be a shame, right? Like there's a sense of shame in it, right? Like, but if the man does not want to marry his brother's widow shall appear before the elders in the gate and declare, my husband's brother refuses to establish a name in Israel for his brother. He will not perform the duty of a laver. The elders of a town shall then summon him to talk to him. If he insists, saying, I do not want to marry, his brother's widow shall go upon him in the presence of the elders, pull the sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and make this declaration. Thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's house. He shall go about in Israel by the family of the unsandaled one. He can refuse, or the next brother down the line can refuse, but they will literally be publicly shamed in front of everybody, and they will literally be spit in the face in front of everybody, and specifically in front of all the important people in town. And you will forever go about with a negative name attached to your family. Like literally, everyone's supposed to refer to him that way. So he technically does have the right of refusal, but if I may, the punishment for it is a lot worse than having a negative tweet, right? Like literally, you are publicly humiliated, and that's supposed to hang with you like for the rest of your life. So they allow an out, but the out seems to be for an extreme situation because nobody would want to be to sort of like be spit in the face in front of all the town elders.
Rabbi, this sounds like the situation perhaps in the Orthodox communities, more Orthodox communities, where a husband just for spite doesn't want to give his wife a get, right? They get on his case, right?
Right, exactly. See, and for most of human history, for most cultures, never mind just Jewish culture, that's the way things worked, right? It's only in a modern urban settings where you can go about life anonymously that this doesn't have the same effect. I mean, now the internet sort of brings it back to a certain extent. Like it's often decried, but like for better or for worse, right? Like you want to keep your name clear in part because if somebody Googles you, you want to make sure that they come up with not bad stuff. Anyway, so this is an ancient version of that. She spits in his face, etc. And this is the second of three background incidences that we have that we'll go through, which is to say, the first one was the background for Moab, why Moab was so terrible in the eyes of the Israelites and the prohibition on marrying. The second one is love right marriage, which is relevant, and then there'll be a third one coming up. So, just for the setting, we'll start out with verse 11 of chapter 1, just so we can sort of zip forward through those first couple of verses. This is they're going back to Bethlehem, Naomi and Orpah and Ruth. Verse 11 says, and Naomi said, go back, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb who could be husbands to you? Go back, my daughters, go, for I'm too old to have a husband. Even if I thought I have hope, this very night I shall have a husband and bear sons. Would you wait for them till they grew up? For them would you be deprived of husbands? No, my daughters, for it is far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has come out against me, right? So he's like, I'm not married. I don't have any more sons. Like, it's stupid for you to wait around for me to find a husband, conceive with him, wait for the kid to grow up, and then marry him. That's ridiculous. Like, go. Live your life. And the key thing here is it'll pop up is she says, it's far more bitter for me. Like she'll be, that's the Hebrew for that is mar. She's that it's bitter, and that theme of bitterness will come through. 14. And they raised their voice and wept once more. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her, right? So the kiss is, they're all crying, like now sort of like, now everybody's lost it, right? Naomi's crying and Orpah's crying and Ruth is crying. They're all hugging each other and kissing each other and wondering what they're going to do. And Orpah finally does what Naomi has repeatedly asked her to do, which is to go. She kisses her, and it's clearly a kissing goodbye. And it's clearly a hard moment for all of them. Orpah is will now exits the scene, never to be seen again. But there's like nothing wrong with her. She's not like a bad person, and she's not doing the wrong thing or doing a selfish thing. She's a normal person doing a normal thing, right? Ruth will prove to like be the heroine, but it's because she's going way above and beyond. There's no stigma attached to Orpah picking up and leaving. And Alter notes that nicely. Like Orpah's a good woman, but she is less resolute than Ruth, right?
Rabbi.
Yep.
I haven't been able to come on the past few weeks, so maybe somebody said this, but apparently Oprah Winfrey's name came from Orpah. No, somebody said that. Yeah, that it was a mispronunciation of, she was named after Orpah, but they mispronounced it.
Yes, that's in the Rashi. No, it's not in the Rashi, but no, we did pick that up because it's too important to miss. And normally I say focus on the text without any digressions, but we did allow that one digression in honor of Ms. Winfrey.
Now I've made us digress yet again.
Right. Just stop. Yeah, no, we do hit that. It is Orpah. It is misspelled on the birth certificate or something like that. This is the source. So she kisses her. JPS translates kisses her farewell. The farewell is just from context, not in the text. We talk Orpah lehamata Ruth dabkaba, and Ruth clung to her, right? Stuck to her. Devek, like in modern Hebrew. Devek is literally the word for glue, like you'd use in a classroom.
Yeah.
So she clings to her. And that's the same word in Genesis for how it says that a man will leave his mother and his father and cling to his wife, right? So it has a sense of sticking together. Here it doesn't have any like marital sense or any sexual sense to it. It's a story of female friendship and companionship and camaraderie. So Ruth clung to her. And she said, she here clearly being Naomi, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people. Go back after your sister-in-law, right? Naomi says, "V'tomer hine shava." Shav is the key word here. There's always a sense of returning of shava. The word is used for returning back to Bethlehem. And she's asking, and she always asks the daughters-in-law to return. Your sister-in-law has returned to her people, and to her gods. Shuvi achrei ivmetach. You should also return like her. You should go back with your sister-in-law. The JPS translation notes that the word here for sister-in-law is used only twice in the Bible to refer to the relationship between women, meaning a woman's sister-in-law. Both instances of this word being used that way occur in this sentence. I mean, it's used twice in the entire Bible. Both of them are exactly this sentence. It's used elsewhere for the only other occurrence of this noun refers to a man's sister-in-law in Deuteronomy 25, chapter 25, twice. And it's also the same word used for love-right marriage, which we've talked about. So Naomi again urges, now that Orpah's gone, Naomi is halfway to her goal. She doesn't want her daughters-in-law to remain with her. Now, one can ask, why? What's Naomi's angle here? She positions it as, you can lead a better life by leaving me. You should go find husbands. Go back to your people and to your gods. Note, like, she's sort of like, you don't have to like stick around with this whole Israelite thing. Like, you go back to your ways, by the way, which may or may not be the most pious thing in the world to say. Note again, like, this is the opposite of Jews thinking the world should of being evangelical, right? Like, you know, the world doesn't have to be like us. Like, she's already like, hey, go back to your gods. Like, no big deal. It's in your interest. So it might just be for their best interest, but also another possibility is Naomi doesn't want him around. Maybe, and keep this one in mind as we go through, Naomi might not want either their company or the responsibility that is implicit with them being around. As the older individual in the relationship, she might not want the responsibility or the implied responsibility of having her daughters-in-law around. Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't want them around because she doesn't want the reminder of her sons.
Yeah. That's also like totally real. Like, sort of like every moment that these younger women are around, it's sort of like it is a reminder of these terrible things that happen, because obviously like their primary relationship is through that vector, right? So absolutely. Or like, you know, you could say that it's a psychologically negative thing. Like, she might want to wallow in her own misery, and that's just sort of like what she wants to do. So keep that in mind, because normally we read the story as one of meaningful friendship, and there's reason to think that might not be what's going on. It might be, it might not be.
Rabbi?
Yep.
It appears to me that Naomi is in deep depression, and she may have affection for her daughters-in-law and doesn't want to infect them with her curse, and so get away from me. I'm cursed. Don't, you know, go live a good life and don't bother about me.
Right, and that absolutely could be the case, and that's in the sense of it is far more bitter in verse 13. It's far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has come out against me. Meaning that God's against me, maybe not against you. Maybe your husbands are dead because I'm bad luck. Maybe if you go and find new husbands, you'll succeed in that, because maybe the problem isn't you, maybe the problem is me. Yeah. So, and it could be, yeah, and it could just be that she just sees her that she's in this black spot. Yeah, and doesn't want them caught up in it, for either for their own good or because she likes, quote unquote, to be in that spot, or like that's her desire. So go back, she says yet again. And 16, this is where we get to the great speech soliloquy of Ruth. Ruth said, "Do not entreat me to forsake you, to turn back from you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people is my people, and your God is my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. So may the Lord do to me, or even more, for only death will part you and me." And she saw that she was insisting on going with her, and she ceased speaking to her. And the two of them went up until they came to Bethlehem. We'll pause there for a second. So that's the great speech. So obviously we have to pause and pull that one apart because it is both short and beautiful. So Vatama Ruth Alt Tifka Ibi Le Azvech. Don't urge me to leave you, Lashuv Machrech, to leave from before you. Ki elasher tilchi elech. Where you go, I will go. Right. So note the first part, like, is don't urge me to leave you, which is say, like, you keep saying go. Stop telling me to go. Like this is, and this, like, sort of like whatever, like, our reasoning is Naomi in a depression? Does she want to feel sorry for herself? Does she think that is she of clear mind, but she just thinks that this is the best thing for her daughters-in-law? Like, you're young, go live your life, whatever it might be. Like, Ruth is like, stop, I don't want to hear it anymore. Don't stop telling me to go. Because, like, there's a strong sense of, like, that you get then is that we're in it together. And there's almost a sense of, like, telling me to leave, like, it's, I don't know, it could be an insult, it could be ridiculous, like, just stop.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
If this was a man and a woman, this sounds like a marriage vow, almost. Till death do us part.
Very much to death do us part. So, so there are, like, obviously, from, I guess, in modern reads, there are somewhat more sexual reads of it, but I don't think it's really in the text. It's really a story of dedicated friendship. What Ruth seems to be saying is, even so, even if what you're saying is, if Naomi's message is essentially like, I'm too old to have a husband and bear children, I'm not a winning bet, you should go. Ruth in this speech seems to be, if so, that's fine by me, because we are going to be in this together. And that's like, so, and if you're unable to find a husband and bear children, then maybe I'll be unable to find a husband and bear children. Maybe that's the way it's going to be, but I will not leave your side. So it has a to death do us part feel to it, that she, that Ruth is just sort of like absolutely loyal, as it were.
So, Rabbi, but in the prior passage, we know that Ruth apparently was living with her husband for about 10 years and apparently near her mother-in-law. So we don't know how old she is here at this point, I don't think. So maybe she felt a little too insecure about trying to go back to a home that maybe didn't feel like her home anymore.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's not like, so right. It's not like she was. It's not like she was married for 8 months. So, exactly. So, however old she is, she's certainly in a fully different phase of life than she was when she left home. Maybe there was a stigma to marrying outside the Moabite tribe, right? Like we know the Israelites didn't like Moabites. We don't know what they thought of the Israelites, though it's, might be safe to assume that they weren't Philo-Semites, as it were, right? Like, yeah. And we'll know from the rest of the story that that, as it were, she remains, she's like relatively young and beautiful. So whether she sees that in herself, others see it in her. So you're right. She might not want to go back because it has been 10 years. Which means, again, like, who knows how old she is, right? Is she 25? Is she 30? Probably something like that, right? You can probably assume a marriage at 15 or 20 or something like that.
Rabbi, this soliloquy is often extracted and quoted in the sense that she is married to the Israelites, and poetically married, and so in that sense, her loyalty is to her husband and the Israelites, and it's more than just female friendship, isn't it? Too, and hasn't it been quoted that way frequently?
Yes.
So I mean, also, I have a personal story from my young youth where my puritanical but very educated rabbinical grandfather quoted this soliloquy to my sister, who early in her marriage left her husband temporarily. And he quoted this to her in rage, and said that to her when she was 21 years old in the presence of my family. So this rings very much to what Richard Hegren was saying, because he was really telling her to go back to her husband with this passage.
Right, and it's sort of like it's striking that it can be used that way. So there are a couple of things going on. It's a powerful passage that then gets used in a few contexts. We're starting out in the immediate context, and what is sort of clear from the story. The immediate context is one of friendship and companionship, and loyalty, right? Like it's that's the main thing, and that's the first thing.
Primary read. That's the textual primary read.
Yes, that's a primary read. It's not the only one, but that seems to be what's prompting everything, right?
Could it be that there's another reason? Maybe she had a self-serving reason. Maybe she thought that she would have a better chance of finding another man if she didn't have the baggage of two daughter-in-laws with her.
Right. So yeah. So that could be that. Right. So Naomi. So I think it's totally worthwhile keeping one's eye on Naomi here, and what her motivations might be, and doing and saying what she does and says. So it certainly could be the case that that she's afraid of playing wingman to the younger and more attractive Ruth. But just keep an eye on that. Ruth, on the other hand, Ruth's motives seem to be pure. So in order, because it's so beauty, and for the Hebrew is sort of more compact than the English, because most of these phrases, where you lodge, I will lodge, your people is my people, and your God is my God, wherever you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. Like it'll be is most of those are two-word things, right? Tilchi elech, right? It's two words. Where you go, I will go, which is like 5 or 6 words in English. But tilchi elech in Hebrew is just a little. It's a little tighter. Va'asher tileni alin, and where you lodge, I will. Where you sleep, I'll sleep. Amech ami, your people, my people. Elohaich, Eloi, your God, my God. There's so much going on here. Like so don't leave, and the JPS translation has a nice commentary on this. Like, do not urge me to leave you. Some of the force of Ruth's retort is lost in translation. The Hebrew paga, he rendered as urge. Don't urge me to leave you. Can have 3 related meanings, which could be to strike down or to beseech, meaning that it's even a it's a very sharp word, implying that Ruth feels some sense of feel some sense of injury by Naomi's repeated urgings to leave. And then for leave you, she does more precisely forsake you. So the verb leave in English focuses on the one who's departing, whereas Ruth's language focuses on the one who will be abandoned and whom she refuses to abandon, right? Like, so so again, like the Hebrew has a slightly stronger force, the same word that God promises not to forsake Israel. She says, I won't forsake you. I won't turn back. Wherever you go, I will go, etc. The JPS comment is, Ruth pledges to share every aspect of Naomi's life, and in the most comprehensive way. The first two parts of this statement acknowledge the nomadic prospects ahead, anticipating an unsettled life, right? This is the sort of like Ruth saying, my eyes are wide open, sister, on like how difficult this could be, right? Where you go, I go, and where you lodge, i.e. where you sleep, like where you end up having to bed down for the night, I will too, right? So that sense of like, I know that we might not have a settled home. I know that this isn't like going to my parents' home. I know this isn't like going to a husband's home. Like, we may be on the move because we have no visible means of support. And we can, and we'll do it together. Like, I know that I know that you're not making any promises to me.
Rabbi, the thing to me is Ruth's motivation versus Orpah. And I think they both had affection for Naomi, but we know nothing about their premarital lives at all. So we don't know if Ruth had an abusive family and didn't want to go back there at all, or as you said, that because she was afraid that they would look down on her or something. We don't know any of that, and that could be part of her. Besides having affection for Naomi, that could be also part of her decision to go with Naomi.
Right. So that absolutely could be the case. Though strikingly, she doesn't say it. She doesn't say, I got nothing to go back to. There's nothing left for me there. So that absolutely could be the case. That maybe that Orpah might have been better set up. But she doesn't. But neither Ruth nor Orpah sort of like cite that as a thing, right? Like so it could be the case, but she doesn't say there's nothing left for me to go back to. She frames it as this is what I want to do. And she does it in the and she does it in a sort of like very intense way, right? So first, where you go, I will go. The elech to the biblical reader, of course, pops up with the first person who goes somewhere in that sense is Abraham, right? Abraham is famously told, Lech lecha, right? Like, you should go. And she here is, as it were, like instead of like taking an order from God, Lech, she does it herself. Like, she's taking agency, right? I will go. Also in this week's Parsha, Rebecca says that when her family asks her permission, do you want to go with this man, with Abraham's servant, to go get married to Isaac? Her response is, Elech, I will go. And that's exactly what Ruth says here, Elech, I will go. Again, the JPS commentary, like those Israelite progenitors, Ruth dares to venture into the unknown. But unlike Abraham, she's not accompanied by family and wealth, nor guided by a promise of greatness. And unlike Rebecca, she knows full well that there's no protecting husband waiting for her. Like Rebecca in this week's parsha says, Elech, that same word, I will go, but she's going to go marry into a wealthy family. And here, Ruth is doing it almost with more faith than Abraham or Rebecca go. Abraham and Rebecca get more credit because they're the actual patriarchs and matriarchs. But like she says, I will go. And again, Abraham gets all this credit for like following God's promise, but ultimately he's following God's promise. Not a bad deal. The Ruth is going, following Naomi, who has explicitly promised nothing. Naomi is essentially promising a life of poverty. And Ruth is saying some version of, I got one life and I would rather live with you in poverty. That's part of the force of this sense. So again, the JPS, through these thematic and verbal links, the two parallel stories from Genesis serve to magnify the singular power of Ruth's chesed, her loving kindness, right? Abraham has God's promise. Rebecca has a promise of a husband. Ruth has a promise of nothing other than companionship. Indeed, unlike her predecessors, Ruth has nothing to gain by going with Naomi. She willingly makes herself a stranger in a strange land so as not to abandon Naomi, who herself has been a stranger in Ruth's Moabite homeland, right?
So I was going to add one thing. So I'm looking at a art scroll, and it says that Ruth and Orpah were of royal lineage, descended from Eglon, king of Moab. And they cite, I don't know what this is, Nazir 23b.
Talmud.
So it was a heroic sacrifice to forsake their company to accompany the impoverished Naomi.
That is that's a midrash, maybe not that is, so there are different ways of doing it. You can, midrashim, as always, are not designed to be sort of exclusively true, as they were, meaning that they can contradict each other. So you can, so in that imagining, Ruth and Orpah are wealthy with everything to lose, and Orpah is being eminently self-interested by going home, and Ruth is making an even greater sacrifice than the text implies, because she's a great woman who's willing to bring herself low for the sake of love of Naomi and love of Hashem.
The other thing that surprises me about this section is what she says kind of implies that she is not planning to remarry. At least that it does to me, the translation. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried, kind of implying that she's not going to marry someone and live with them and die and be buried with them versus her mother-in-law.
Right. Spoiler alert. We know how the story ends, but yeah, right. It does seem. So whether or not that's her plan, or if it's a way of saying, that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Okay.
Seems to be. So yeah, she does say it, and it does give the sense of I will spend the rest of my life with you, and in the end, the sense of it seems to then be, if it means that I have to spend the rest of my life with you, that I'm willing to do, or I will never leave, or maybe in the event, I will never leave your family. Your family is my family, and in fact, though she will get married, she will remain in Naomi's family, in Naomi and hers. So yeah. So yeah, you could read it either that they're impoverished and there's nothing to go back to, or again in the midrashic imagining that she's wealthy, a princess. That's more like the rabbis don't want anyone to be anonymous and don't want schleppers, right? They would rather have a if there's a Moabite who's going to marry into the Israelite people and become the ancestor of King David, she herself should be a princess. Like, she should be of royal lineage, so that it's not just like anyone who it comes from, but it's a great person. Obviously, it's comparatively unlikely that the daughter of the king marries a itinerant farmer, but such is the midrash. You go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Which is talini alin. And lodge again has the same sense of that it has in English, which is like a temporary stay for the night. That doesn't mean where you lease an apartment. It has a sense of temporary temporary place to sleep while on the road. Your people shall be my people. Your people, my people. That's important partly because it's before Elohai Elohai. Again, as we've mentioned in this space, or as I've mentioned in this space, North American Jews, because of our cultural situation, tend to see Judaism as a religion. Jews, Christians, Muslims. Ancient Israelites, more similar to modern Israelis, saw Judaism as an ethnicity. So first, your people are my people. And then second to that, your God will be my God. Meaning the primary way of being in is peoplehood. What your ethnic designation is. Your people will be my people. If you're an Israelite, I'm an Israelite. If you're living with the Israelites, I am living with the Israelites. This is who I am and who we are, is what she's saying here. And then after that, your God will be my God, right? The primary factor is the peoplehood factor, and then after that is the religion, as we would say, factor, but peoplehood is first. So again, this is not insignificant, and that's and this is the other thing. This isn't just a story of friendship, but it also is obviously a story cited as a story of conversion, right? That Ruth is the first convert, as it were, quote unquote, and that this is the moment of it, right? Like, and the key thing is just that, like, that she is binding her destiny to the destiny of Naomi's people. So that, and your God is my God, right? What's her angle on your God is my God? So, Arlene, I think you're speaking, but you're muted.
She recognizes that the gods are different in Moab and in Israel. So
she does. Though, let's dig down. Is the road? She's on the road to Bethlehem. Is she having what in English we call, is this a road to Damascus moment? Right? Like, is this like? Does she suddenly believe in the God of Israel?
I don't think it's sudden, because she's been living with her husband, That was part of what she bought into when she decided to marry the guy and leave her family, leave her husband. And she already had, well, she had the sister-in-law, the brother-in-law, that was part of the family she was marrying into when she left this whole Moabite community that she'd been part of.
Yeah, it's...
She was converting by the moment she married into the guy.
Right, exactly. Because conversion, remember, is conversion, the way we tend to think of it, is a later construct. The construct of conversion, again, the way we think of it, oh, I now believe in this religion, comes later. Back then, you just sort of, you are what your culture is, or again, what your husband's culture is. So she sort of becomes an Israelite by and takes on worship of the Israelite God by virtue of her marriage. Notice again, Naomi had said to both of them, go back to your homes and your gods, meaning like I released you, like you're released from having to do this stuff because you worship the God of your culture, or of your people. And Orpah, you can go back to your home and to your gods. And Ruth here is saying, no, I'm sticking with your people, your culture, and with your God. Your God will be my God. And the JPS comment here is Ruth affirms her commitment to Israel's God because it's Naomi's God, not because of some independent conviction of her own.
I think, Rabbi, I think that the JTS is wrong because essentially Ruth is actually asserting her own agency there. She's actually making her own decision. In the other cases, the biblical concept was that the woman adopted or wasn't given independent agency, right, just took on the identity of the gods of the husband's home, or that was her peoplehood, but she didn't have the agency to choose for herself. In this case, she's choosing for herself to go with Naomi, and that is her independent choice. And she could have gone back, she could have gone forward. So she's choosing, and therefore that is her feminist, independent agency.
So yes, I agree. It absolutely is her agency.
JTS is not right in that interpretation.
So yeah, so I do think that she's exercising her agency here, whether or not like that. I think the fact that she's exercising agency and whether or not she's adopting Israel's God because of an inner conviction or because it's part of the deal of following Naomi is the point here. I think those are two separate things. Sorry, Linda.
Yeah,
well, I was just going to say that I don't think we should ignore the human factor. I think that the cleaving that she must have had to this woman, the cleaving that Ruth must have had to her mother-in-law, Judaism is a way of life. It's not just a series of laws or little idols or anything else. It is a complete way of life, and I think that I can't ignore the level of cleaving that she had to her mother-in-law, and who's to say that she had a satisfactory family life in Moab? We don't know that.
We don't know. Maybe she's a princess. Maybe she has a terrible home to go back to. Exactly. But so we don't know that. We only know sort of like this part that she is really declaring her loyalty and her all-inness with Naomi's people. Your people are my people, and your God will be my God. And she demonstrates the loyalty to that God because the very next thing out of her mouth is an oath in Yud He Vav He's name. So her first thing is she makes an oath to the Israelite God. So like she truly in that sense is all in.
And I think I just want to add that how many of us at different times in our lives has found our home in a different place than where we thought we would find our home. And I mean that metaphorically.
Right. Yeah, and so here, that's definitely the case in that she's ending up somewhere different than her birth suggests, and even the circumstance of her life suggests. Orpah is the normal one. Ruth is the unusual one, taking an unusual step and an unusual risk.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
But evidently, life as an Israelite was not bad for her. She must have been content with it. And she also might be taking just a very pragmatic solution. I've been happy as an Israelite. I like Naomi. I'm in a new land. Why not stay here and see what happens? It might be a very pragmatic one.
So this is still on the road going back to Judah. So the risk is she is for the first time moving away. Her up to this point she's been living in an Israelite household in Moab.
Right.
And now she's moving back to the different culture where she will be the foreigner. And presumably with all the baggage that usually carries, which is to say, speaks with an accent or whatever the case may be, right? Like meaning that she'll have all of the baggage of being an outsider, which curiously, despite all of this, your people will be my people, your God will be my God, where you die, I will die. She, for the rest of the book, will be called Ruth the Moabite by everyone who meets her, including Boaz, and by the narrator, will continue to call her Ruth the Moabite. So that's the other question of this. And again, the JPS asked that question, like, what was the social reality in ancient Israel with regard to such identification? Like when that she's declaring herself this other thing. She's again using her agency to adopt a new identity, not her husband's identity, which she could slough off. She's declaring it for herself. Would the text's original audience have understood that Ruth could unilaterally declare herself to be part of Naomi's people? Right. So maybe not, because we see her as the first Jew, and she's in the Tanakh, and somebody put her in the Tanakh, but she's continually, even after this point, referred to as Ruth the Moabite.
Well, there are other women in the Bible that demonstrate a kind of loyalty, right?
Yeah.
So I think she's with matriarchs that demonstrate loyalty when it's not of their people to another people.
Right. This is the strongest instance of it, but yes.
Yeah.
So your God will be my God. Again, this religious, what we would call religious identification becomes part of it. Where you die, I will die.
And isn't Naomi really basically barren at this point?
Yes, she's
not, there's no future for her with husbands, children, and she's wedding herself to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that there are women without men and protection of men. Correct. I mean, this is incredibly brave.
Yes.
So this is true agency.
Yes. It could be that she thinks that there's a payoff for her, but more likely it's a significant risk because she's throwing in her lot in a new land that she hasn't been to before, with a new people that she's not a part of, and her only connection there is a childless widow.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not a great situation.
No, I don't think so.
Rabbi, excuse me, I have a question. When Ruth, well, I'm sorry, when Naomi lived in Moab, in whose ever house, would a woman in those days would take the religion of whatever household of her man. So it really wasn't her God at this point. It was another God. Now she's going to switch countries and go back to another God. So this so when Ruth is saying your God will be my God, she's saying, well, whatever God you take up in the new land will be my God.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a
she's not talking about a specific God. She said, whichever God you take up, I'll go along with.
Right. So there are different ways of reading it. You could read it in that she's loyal to the God of Israel, or she's just like, yeah, whatever. Like, whatever you're serving for dinner, I'm good with. Whatever God you need me to worship, that's what I got. Like, so you could read it either way. Either she's loyal to this one, or that, yeah. So either one works, depending on what we want to think of Ruth. And it could just be rhetorical, meaning that she's giving a poetic speech, or it could be that it's not even entirely clear that she feels she needs to throw it in, right? Your people will be my people, and not only that, but your God will be my God. Like, it could, like that. Maybe you think that I would be one of those Israelites that's constantly straying off the path, but no, I won't even be like that. I'm all in. The Midrash imagines a back and forth here that Naomi, when she says, "Don't ask me to leave you, I want to stay with you," that Naomi says, "Well, on Shabbat, we are not supposed to travel on Shabbat and Yom Tov," and then Ruth says, "Where you go, I will go." That it's not a poetic statement; it's a halachic statement that Ruth is explaining the laws to her, and then Naomi says, "Well, once you're an Israelite, you're not supposed to sleep with non-Israelite men." And she says, "Well, where you sleep, I will sleep." And then she says, "Well, then Naomi says, we're supposed to keep 613 mitzvot." And she says, "Well, your people will be my people." And she says, "Well, we can't worship idols." She says, "Well, your God will be my God." And she says, we have to, and if you violate these commandments, it's a capital crime. If you violate Shabbat or worship other gods, she says, "Well, where will you die? I will die." That it's that it's not just a poetic statement, that the rabbis will break it down, that each statement is a means of conversion, that she is slowly, one by one, agreeing to all the key parts of being Jewish, and that so they are, if she's not converting in the moment, the tradition retroactively converts her, that she's agreeing to all the key precepts of living as an Israelite.
The fact that Alter doesn't capitalize the word God here leads me also to believe it's just and yet the next sentence, he said the word Lord is capitalized.
Right. Well, so different words there. So JPS does capitalize, use an uppercase G, but it's different words, right? So like in verse 16, when she says, "Your God will be my God," it is, it's Elohai Elohai, which is the God could be then uppercase or lowercase G. It could go either way. But in 17, when they translate Lord, that's Yud Hey Vav Hey, that's the name of God. There's no question about that one, that of who she's referring to. There she's referring to the God of Israel, without any. So the previous statement is, there are lots of gods out there, but yours, that's what I'm taking. And then the next one is using God's proper name.
I want to say something. I think it's not, I mean, it's quite understandable that Ruth is always referred to as the Moabite, because that's who she is by birth. And I mean, we may not see that with us, looking a lot like anybody else, but let's say that we were a different race. We could never change that. And I think being born who you're born, I mean, you can't change that you were born that, in a way.
Yep, I think that is in fact going on. They see it as a closer to what we think of as race, i.e. something that's immutable, as opposed to something like religion that we see as mutable. Yeah.
Rabbi, they keep talking, out throughout the Bible and in the Haggadah, they talk about sojourning versus moving permanently to another location. And at the beginning of this story of Ruth, Naomi's husband moves to Moab because of a drought, and then which would be like a sojourn, but then he decides to stay. Is this?
Yeah, or he decides to stay, or they like when Naomi goes back, it's because she's heard that the famine is over. So the implication of the text is that it's a 10-year famine, or a 10+ year famine, as it were. Because it's not implied that it's a permanent move, though sometimes impermanent moves become permanent. But it's not. But it seems to be meant to leave with the impression that it was not planned as a permanent move. That's a sojourn, a temporary move, like the Israelites in Egypt. They go down because there's a famine. When the famine is over, they want to go back, but by then they're enslaved. Same thing here. He goes to Moab because there's a famine, but then dies before the famine is over. All right, Adkan, we tonight, if you want to come to the class tonight, it'll be a half hour late, meaning I'll begin at 7:30 because there's a 7 o'clock Shiva for Barbara Butensky, Brian Butensky's mother. The class will be a little bit late because I'm going to be at the Shiva for Butensky's. So that's tonight. And outside of that,